Thank you so much, Dr. Long, for being here. I am so excited to be speaking with you. I've been waiting for this conversation. You want to start by telling us how you got into the research and exactly what you do?
Certainly. I started off my career as a college football coach, American football. And what I learned there is that we spend a lot of money, a lot of resources into recruiting the best student athletes that we can find. And what I learned is that not once ever was our most prized recruit, the most talented player, ever became our most productive player. Maybe they were close to the top, many times they're in the middle, and sometimes they were a complete washout. So I wanted to study why that occurred. What were the psychological factors that contributed to that form of lack of performance, to put it mildly? So what I really look for is waste.
Waste in like energy, waste in what areas?
Yeah, well, lots of times it's an energy, but the energy is a big deal. So I appreciate you bringing that up. But waste in terms of potential, waste in terms of opportunities, waste in terms of resources, waste in terms of investment. And that's the thing when it comes to business and sports. The most expensive investment that organization make is in the human capital, but that's where the most waste is.
Yeah.
So I devised a psychological test that's scientifically sound, and that identifies where the waste is in an organization and within individuals.
So do you work mostly with like sports teams or with businesses or both?
Both.
And which do you prefer, or you're not allowed to say?
I'm allowed to say it really doesn't make any difference, to be honest with you. It's it really comes down to whether they want to get better or not. And if the incentives are in place, if proper incentives are in place, then it doesn't really matter whether it's business or sports, because then it just comes down to people and their own limitations and how they want to overcome those. So the activity doesn't really matter.
And are you still very involved in like the research part or more the consulting?
Oh no, it's the research is absolutely crucial and a must imperative. Actually, I just finished writing an email to a client stating, "Hey, I need data. And so I need the list of all the people who are going to participate, and I need that I need their names and their emails so I can send out invitations to what's known as the Prosperity Trait Index, so they can complete it. So when I go present my keynote workshop, I have the data to present to them, and because of that data, I can provide a teaching plan for them.
Yeah. So this assessment that they do, like, what does it look like? What does it go through? What does it cover? And what information do you get from it?
Yeah, it covers. It takes about 30 minutes to complete. It's expansive and comprehensive. And what it does is it measures people's attitudes and beliefs about their own performance. And
Their attitudes and beliefs about their own performance, nothing to do with like everyone else.
No, just themselves. And so what they get back is they get their prosperity trait score, because what's important to understand is a trait there's two types of traits. So there's there's personality traits and there's character traits. And personality traits are fairly fixed. They don't really change over time. I'm just a guy from Jersey doing this, and I'm not really a whole lot different than, when I was a kid in New Jersey. So those
Same here.
personality doesn't really change. Okay. And they're largely inborn. You're largely hereditary. I'm very similar to my father. There's some of my mom mixed in, but even my siblings say, man, you are so much like dad. So those things don't change, but character traits, they have to be acquired, and they are constantly changing. And what this test does is it measures a previously undetected character trait that I've named prosperity. And every psychological trait, whether it's personality or character, well, there's a corresponding trait. So some people are more introverted and some people are more extroverted, but it all runs along a continuum, actually within a bell curve. Honesty and deceit are two character traits, right? But on one end is honesty and one end is deceit. And most of us are somewhere in the middle. Well, with prosperity is that people who score very high on it, they prosper, they maximize their opportunities, they maximize their talent and their resources. They know how to leverage them, okay, due to the mindset that they've acquired, okay. But on the opposite end is wastefulness. And people will, they'll waste their opportunities, they'll waste their resources, they'll waste their potential. Okay.
I talk a lot about, I have like so many questions to ask you, but first, like, this is just like burning in me because like I know anyone who's listening to this for a while is like know that like I talk a lot about like growth mindset by like Carol Dweck.
Yes.
So like how does that like come in relation to like what you're doing?
It's very close. I'm very familiar with Carol's work, and when I read her work, it's very similar to to where I started with this. And when people ask me, what's the profile of a successful candidate for your for your program, I said, well, they have to have a growth-oriented attitude. And I've been talking about this long before I even knew about Carol Dweck. So that growth-oriented mindset is absolutely key, because if they're satisfied, okay, and they're not really curious about things, then they're not really a good candidate, right? But if they think that, hey, I can get better, I'm wondering what else is within me, because what the test shows is that wherever they score, right, and what they do is they get feedback on 4 dimensions of the trait, and it will show their driving forces and their points of friction. And a lot of people will concur with their driving forces, because these are the known knowns. It's the points of friction that kind of trips people up, is that's where they didn't know something about themselves, but that's where the growth is. That's where the growth lies. And so some people, accept the feedback, and some people contest it. And all I can say is, well, you're the one who provided the data. This is the feedback to the data that you provided.
Yeah.
And with a growth-oriented mindset, they go, oh, this is cool.
Right.
All right, let's move on. Let's, how do I turn these points of friction into driving forces? Where people who aren't growth-oriented, that's where the resistance comes up, whether it's due to inertia or energy, they don't want to spend the energy, right? Or the emotion, the pain and fear, right? Or they're just reactive, which means, hey, if you say this, then I'm going to resist automatically. And if they have those kind of barriers already in them, then they're not really growth oriented.
Yeah, I want to get into the points of friction, but I think we just need to like define for a moment, what's the difference between like personality traits and character traits?
Yeah, the personality traits, they're inborn. Okay, they're inherited. Okay.
Right. So, but like what sort of things would be a personality trait?
Oh, like whether you're introverted or extroverted, whether you're more thought oriented or more action oriented.
Do you not think that like that could be learned or like changed?
That can be those things can be modified. Right?
Okay.
But under heavy stress, people will always revert back to their to their base personality. And what can be learned is that even under heavy stress, they can modify their personality traits in order to exhibit the behavior that's needed for that moment. But most people don't have that kind of training. I can guarantee you that.
Shame, right? That's why we need people like you.
But the character traits, they have to be learned. All right. So like discipline, on the opposite side of discipline is laziness. We are comfort-seeking organisms. All right. And discipline has to be learned. It is not, there's no way that we are born with that. I mean, I've raised 2 kids, all right, and I was a kid, and I know that process because they come out of the womb and they have needs and they want it now.
Yeah.
Right. So there's no delayed gratification. That has to be learned.
So anything that has to be learned will fall under a character trait, and anything that you just do by default would fall under a personality trait. I'm just trying to like a general idea of like people are trying to figure out for themselves.
Yes, that's a pretty good way to put it.
Okay, so let's go into this points of friction, or really like the unknown that we spoke about not long ago with Dave Nordell, who really told me to speak to you about this as you're the expert on it. So how did you like, before like get like improving that part, but like, how did you know, or at what point did you realize that this was the part of the biggest growth?
Well, you don't know what you don't know. And so if you don't know about it, you can't do anything about it. You can't mitigate it. You can't improve on it. And it's kind of like that person who doesn't know they're being really obnoxious. They think they're just being themselves and things are fine, but everybody else in the room goes, whoa, what is that guy talking about? Okay. And once that person is then made aware that their behavior is not really accepted, right, and it's actually working against them, then they can actually do something about it. That's when the unknown becomes a known. And what the PTI does is that it makes the unknown known, because they don't know how their attitudes and beliefs about their own performance are holding them back.
Do you really think that, like, the people, is it like a lack of awareness, lack of self-awareness? Like, what makes a person not aware that these things are holding them back?
Well, yeah, awareness is part of it, but I got to tell you, I don't know, without taking the test, how else are you going to be made aware of it? Right. So when it comes to things like, self-confidence, how you view yourself, when it comes to, your ability to manage frustration, right, and be patient and persistent, and the discipline part, right, but also goal orientation, right? What you don't know is actually the things that are keeping you back. Now, driving forces are important, right? Because that's the fuel that will catapult you to greatness. Right? But this thing about these points of friction, they just slow you down or possibly hold you up from whatever you can actually possibly achieve. Right? So I swim a couple of times a week. Okay. Now, if I go as fast as I can, right, without paying attention to the points of friction in the water, it's just a lot of wasted energy, right? But I know if I keep my head still and keep my head buoyant, okay, and if I know that if I really extend my stroke as far as possible and hold it for even just a fraction of a second, I'll extend my stroke, okay? And then if I rotate my upper body well, right, this eliminates points of friction that makes my body more efficient through the water, okay? Well, the mind is pretty much the same thing, is that we have these points of friction within our own belief system that slow us down. And mostly, and generally, we don't know about these things. These are the unknown unknowns.
These are things, though, that they're unknown to the people inside, right? The people taking the assessment, but they are known to you. So are they really unknown?
They're not known to me until, like, you know,
They're not known to you in relation to them, but you have created like profiles of like what a person needs in order to be successful, to be productive, to be efficient. Like, it's not completely unknown, this area.
Well, it's not known to me until the person provides the data. So like right now, I don't know what your points of friction are. I don't know what your driving forces are. I'll know as soon as I get the data. Okay.
And then it becomes known to everyone.
Yeah. Right. And well, no, it becomes known to me, but then it becomes also known to you because you get the results in real time. Right. And so with me, then I can see exactly, you know, how to develop a learning plan for you. But then if you're part of an organization and everybody else, you know, completes the PTI, then I can create a learning plan for the entire organization based on those driving forces and based on those points of friction to make an efficient learning plan for everybody.
And when you make your learning plan, like, is it individual? I'm assuming it's for the whole group, like the whole team, everyone together.
So yeah, I have a couple upcoming projects that I'm waiting on data for. And once I get the data, then I can create the learning plan based on their results. Okay, so it's not a complex process, but it's a required process. Otherwise, you're just shooting in the dark. And that's what I see with a lot of training programs is that, oh, we have this training program and it's just off the shelf. Here,
Same one for every person.
Yeah, and that's, I particularly from a psychological skill training standpoint, that's not the way to go, right? Because then your strengths are somebody else's weaknesses and you're spending a lot of time improving your strengths. Why?
Right.
Okay.
Leverage your strengths. You don't need to like specifically.
Yeah, you don't have to improving. You're already done that.
Another reason.
Yeah, but you got to get rid of those points of friction, or else you end up like, a swimmer in the water who's just thrashing around, going as hard as they can, but they're not going anywhere.
Yeah. Do you tend to find in the same companies, it's the similar points of friction among the teams, or it's just random?
It's random. What it shows, it really reveals the culture that they're in. Because that's really what culture is. It's just a embodiment of their beliefs and attitudes. Right? But what's important to understand about beliefs is that they determine behavior. So that's just absolutely crucial. So I don't like to throw the term around cultural transformation because it scares people, but that's what really happens is that the culture is transformed, from an
inside out perspective, right? Like you're actually what is creating that culture you're improving.
Yeah. And what I see with a lot of cultural transformation programs is that they try to do it too big. And really all change occurs at the cellular level. So when you change each person and you do that in a collective manner, then, then the culture starts to change. But that's, like John Cotter, who's, one of my mentors, said, you have to start small.
Yeah.
If you want cultural transformation, that's an end product.
Yeah.
So if you can change each, you can change a person by person, but that's where you really have to understand, really, identify what those beliefs and attitudes are, so you can change those to more effective beliefs. And then they start to perform better. And if the right incentives are in place, they will continue to perform better.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I'm just curious, like if someone were to take this assessment, what would they like see about themselves? And then what would, on a personal level, what would they have to do once they hear about the action plan?
Sure. Well, the test is conducted, is taken online. And I send out an invitation through email, and then they get the invitation in their email. All they got to do is just click on the link, and then that brings them to the test, and they just start inputting data. And the first part is just their name and what their job is, and just some demographic variables, and then they get into the test and they respond to each statement. And once they complete, once they finish it, they just hit submit, and they get their test right, they get their results, their report right away. And in the report, it shows where they lie within that bell curve. Scores go from 1 to 99, and that shows what percentile they're in. And I want to make this very clear: where they start doesn't really matter. All right, so they could be, they could score, in the 10th percentile in the second sigma, or they could score in the 75th percentile in the 4th sigma. It doesn't really matter. All right. What matters is, okay, here's the information, and here are my driving forces and my points of friction. Right. Then in the training program, whatever that is whether it's online or on demand or executive coaching, right? Okay, here's what you need to do in terms of mental toughness. Here's what you need to do in terms of self-confidence. Here's what you need to do in terms of discipline. Here's what you need to do in terms of goal orientation. Is
the goal to get to like 99 by all of them, or
no, really the goal is just to improve by 1 sigma. If you improve, if a person improves by 1 sigma, they'll see significant results in terms of their performance. And that's what shows, when people perform or improve their PTI score by 1 sigma, there's a 0 failure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there a way for a person like to take this on their own? Like if an entrepreneur is just listening to this and not in like corporate, but that's on the executive coaching level. Amazing. Okay. So we will have that link in the show notes. Is there anywhere else where people can connect with you and learn more about you?
The website is longtraining+Research.com. And all the information is there. And then if they want to schedule a 30-minute consult with me, that's on the contact page through Calendly.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Long. I really appreciate your time here today.
I certainly appreciate the opportunity. Thanks so much for your interest.